Hello and welcome to From the North. Today's podcast, we are looking at the whole issue of women's safety and whether this could be a watershed moment. After the horrific killing of Sarah Everard in London, the phrase, "she was just walking home," resonated with so many people. This happened in London, but it could have happened here in the North, and these things are happening all the time. Aggression, intimidation, harassment of women. How many of us have clutched our keys in our fist as we're walking home from a night out, or had to deal with sexual harassment or assault or violence? It's not just women who need to be angry and call it out, but men too, and they are. We're joined by Daisy Whitehouse from Right to Walk in Manchester, a new group which came together after Sarah's death, and Irene Affle, who was the first black inspector in Merseyside Police, which was quite a rarity at the time. First of all, thank you both for joining us today. Just give us your reaction as to why Sarah's death, horrifically sad, has provoked this outpouring of grief and anger.
I think it's spoken to a lot of people, because any of us could be in that situation where we've been to a friend's, we're on our way home, we're walking through an area that we're familiar with, and then something so terrible happens whereby, she lost her life. And I just think that really, really resonates for people, that it could happen to anyone at any time. And there's a lot of fear around that, fear around women walking alone the streets at night time. And we should absolutely be able to do that, and do that in safety.
Now, Sarah's family have called her bright and beautiful. The 33-year-old was walking home. She had running shoes. She called her boyfriend on that walk home. She took steps to try and keep herself safe, but she wasn't. And a lot of people have been really scared about that now, haven't they, Daisy?
Those things shouldn't be necessary, but we all kind of know that they are, and we all follow kind of these little rules that we think will help keep us safe, and that obviously didn't have any impact at all. And I think it really shook everybody immediately, and I think people just started to talk about their own experiences really, really quickly, and there was just a bit of an awakening realization that thing that I feel, that all my friends feel, and that we don't really talk about it very often. We just sort of get on with it.
Now let's talk about the Vigil in London. People coming together to remember Sarah. When it got dark, more and more people got there. They came, it was banned, but they still came. And then there were incidents where we saw women being held down by the police, very disturbing images. Will that destroy trust in the police?
I think it is. I think one photograph can do so much, can't it? And personally, that puts me in two minds, because I work in the media and I understand how it works, and I understand that a camera phone picture from the wrong angle can look really damaging and also not always be the real story. But that picture was on the front pages of all the newspapers. That picture was circulated across all social media channels, and it does something to people's perception, doesn't it? And it is something that you can't easily undo. And it's a time where emotions are really, really high, and people have, so much that they're worried about, and it just kind of adds to it.
And do you think, is there a real worry it would put people off reporting crimes, reporting, the aggressions, the intimidation, the misogyny to police, having seen the actions of the police at a vigil?
I hope not. I think people are put off reporting those sorts of crimes anyway. I think we sort of feel like people don't take those sorts of crimes seriously. And I think we feel that there's so many people have asked for examples when we've been running our Right to Walk campaign, and it feels like there's a hierarchy of abuse, and actually there isn't. But I think as a woman you feel, will a man take that seriously? Will they understand the pain or the fear that I've felt? So I think that's there anyway.
Irene, I described you as a rarity in the police. An inspector, a black inspector, a woman boss, to hear that women just don't think they're going to be taken seriously when they report these offences that happen all the time. Your reaction to that? You must be really disappointed and frustrated.
It is sad. It does sadden me that women don't feel confident to come forward and report these incidences, because the police really do need to know what's happening and what these assaults and these things that are happening to women when they're on the streets and walking home. I think we really need to sort of get the message out to give women confidence to come forward and to take action on those reports, every single one of those reports, because each one of them is really, really important. And yes, the police deal with a whole myriad of offences, ranging from murder to, sort of the more sort of lesser offences of antisocial behaviour, etc. But each report of a crime is important, and each report needs to be investigated, and particularly when it comes to the safety of women on the streets and being harassed and being assaulted on the streets. Women really do need to come forward and have the confidence and the courage to do that. But the police also need to put the message out that they welcome those reports and that they want people to come forward and report these issues, because otherwise we don't get a true picture of what's really happening out there, and we can't put measures in place to stop it from happening.
Yeah, you had your own experiences of sexism within the force, didn't you, yourself, as an inspector?
I mean, yeah, that sexism, it's in society, and it's in the police service. And yes, I had instances of sexism whilst I was working for the police and throughout my career. And it's to some degree, it's kind of acceptable, as just sort of, this is just a bit of banter, it's just a bit of fun, and we're colleagues together. But it can have a really, really detrimental impact on the individual who's on the receiving end of that. And it is important to challenge that. And things have come a long way in the police service, and that kind of behaviour is not acceptable anymore, and it does get challenged within the service. So there may be a handful of officers who think that it's okay to do that, but the vast majority of officers know that it's not okay to do that and will intervene when those things happen.
We've heard today that Merseyside Police are getting their very first female chief constable, Serena Kennedy. Will that make a difference, Daisy? Do you think, knowing someone at the top, a woman at the top of the force will more likely to take these offences seriously?
I hope so. I think we just need women at the top of everything, don't we, really? No, diversity is important in every single place, in every part of society, and the more voices and the more opinions there are and the more representation there is, then the better. But yes, I think it's a great appointment.
The Met's led by one of the few female chief constables. There's been calls for her to resign. Should she?
It didn't go well, did it? But whether that was her call, I don't know.
Irene, your thought?
It is a difficult call, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, she had a commitment to ensure that the COVID rules were followed. And, whether the approach of the police was the right approach remains to be seen, or is the subjective question, isn't it? Because, the group said that they were protesting in a COVID safe way, but they were so passionate about it, they needed to have their voice heard. So, it's out for debate, isn't it, whether she made the right call and whether it was actually, in fact, her call to take that tactic and to employ those tactics in terms of policing that demonstration. But it does leave a bad taste in your mouth, doesn't it, when, women are there trying to voice their concern about their safety and, being able to own the streets and being able to walk on the streets and be safe. And then we have, a police service that's headed by a woman closing that down, closing that dialogue and closing that demonstration down. So, it does kind of leave a bad taste in the mouth that that's happened.
In Manchester, the event was held online. You urged people not to break the law. Tell us about what happened, the strength of feeling, the support you had from various communities.
I think for us, we did want to hold an in-person event, but we spoke to the council, we spoke to the police. We knew it was the right thing to do to tell people to stay at home. We brought together as many people as we could. to share their experiences. I think for us, it wasn't about a political message. It was about bringing women together, giving them a space to say what they wanted to say in response to what had happened. We were lucky in that Andy Burnham joined us, and he read something that was an experience from a woman who'd written to us, which we hope was, you know, quite powerful to see a man read that experience, I think. And I think it was quite brave of him. It was a woman that had been groped in the street, basically. And there were lots of those experiences. And it was just not, you know, it was a space for people to speak. And I think we achieved that. And we worked with Aurelia magazine, who work with women from all walks of life. So it was, diversity was there, and different voices. And moving forwards, we're just working on that now. We are a group of women who've all got quite a lot to say and quite a lot of ideas. And I guess what we want to work out is what we can do next that will have the most impact.
Yeah. Now, one thing that you said was that after Sarah's death, there have been people sharing their experiences, you know, often for the first time. And I just got started thinking, you know, this starts very, very young, doesn't it? When, you know, we were in our school uniforms and got the cat whistles, the intimidation, the sexual innuendo, you know, thinking about my experience. I was 14, I was doing cross country at school, and a guy decided to flash, take his pants down, had wrapped them around his ankles. I reported it to the school, they reported it to the police, and guess what the question was to me? What was I wearing? What was I wearing? Not the fact that he had his trousers round his ankles masturbating and I was in my school PE kit. I was asked what I was wearing. Then I had a Saturday job in the Central Library in Newcastle, and every week we had people come in with their mirrors, looking up our skirts. You know, we didn't even bat an eyelid in the end. We didn't bat an eyelid. We didn't know then it was called upskirting. There was never much of a fuss. They were never thrown out. They weren't banned. It took decades for that to become an offence. But do you think it's a generational thing that young women now aren't standing for it, the things that we just used to put up with?
I think it definitely is a generational thing, and I can resonate with some of the stories that you've told there, Elaine, because I remember, I think I was 13 years of age and I was walking home from the shop, and I was flashed to by this man, and I just, you know, you're just shocked and you're like, you don't know what to do. And I ran home, but I didn't tell anyone because I just thought, did that really happen? It didn't really kind of resonate with me, and I didn't actually report it. And it's happened several times since then where I've been flashed at in the street, and you just think, what is this? And I kind of probably wrongly looked at it as a joke instead of thinking, no, this is really absolutely wrong. Because, you know, I was a child at the time, and yes, I was quite a bit of a tomboy, so I was, you know, quite an outgoing child, so to speak. But for someone who was a little bit more sensitive, you know, that would have been a really devastating incident for them to endure. So for me, yeah, I think back in the day, growing up, for me, it was just like, that was just one of those things that happened, and I didn't really think too much about it. But growing up now and seeing what that can lead to, you know, because it can start off as flash and it can lead to a lot more serious things, and it's just got to be stopped. And I think younger women now are now just saying, no, enough's enough. I do not want to be wolf whistled at. I do not want to be groped. I do not want to feel unsafe walking home from a friend's house or from university or from a night out, from wherever I'm walking home from. I do not want to feel unsafe, and I shouldn't have to feel unsafe. I think the message is now getting out there.
We do feel unsafe, you know, every day. You know, there's that question. You know, I've travelled abroad with my job and been in conflict areas and felt safer than sometimes walking home back to my house from Manchester on a night out. You know,
I live quite far out, and I have to get a 45-minute taxi on my own if I want to go out in Manchester, and I worry about that all day, which is daft. But yeah, I think you're right. I think I have, in our group, there's younger women, and I work with lots of younger women. I employ lots of younger women, and they are so quick to call out bad behavior now. And I still do that thing of thinking, oh, I don't want to make them feel bad. And, you know, if someone's done something inappropriate, especially if it's like in a work setting, and that's just ridiculous. We should just say, no, don't do that.
Yeah, well, let me talk you through. I just asked my colleagues in the last 24 hours to talk about some of their experience, to see what things, you know, who was calling it out and what happened. One of my colleagues said she broke down late at night in a car, called roadside assistance, and the guy who fixed the car wanted sex and paying. You know, that is an abuse of power on every level, isn't it? And how, you know, you're in their hands because you are waiting on the side of the road. Several others said they'd been grabbed at, touched, kissed, you know, not wanting to be kissed on public transport and in this street. Colleagues crossing the line, getting too close, coming on to them, being very suggestive, inappropriate behaviour. Another said her 70-year-old mum has only now, today, told her about a series of sexual offences, assaults that she endured 50 years ago at work, and it's because of Sarah's death that she's now speaking out. You know, that is really shocking. We've heard of this 97% figure. You know, almost everyone has a story. So what do we do now?
That's a $1 million question, isn't it? It's such a big change that we're talking about. It's a combination of attitude and education, things like primary school relationship education, which seems to be debated a lot at the moment, that clearly needs to happen so that we're impacting on people really young. I think public spaces need to be better. I'm not a believer that we need more people checking on us or watching us.
Or undercover police officers in nightclubs.
No.
Because they themselves, if you feel someone's watching you, you know, we don't know they're watching us to protect us.
No. And who are they to judge? You know, how will you judge a situation on the other side of a noisy nightclub as to whether a man's attention is warranted or not? Or I think that's such a complicated, and it's also not a fair position to put a police officer in, I don't think. But lights, you know, designing public spaces so that they're more attractive for people to walk through, and so they just feel safer. All that kind of stuff is not the answer, but it's important, I think. Now,
Irene, another colleague told me last night she shouted back for the first time when someone randomly started shouting and swearing at her when she was locking up her bike. And she said because of the debate, she felt empowered to shout back. And she said a couple of other people sort of came in and checked on her. And again, it was that word, she felt empowered. She was a bit scared afterwards, but she felt she was doing something. What you thought?
I think it's important to have that courage, and not everybody will have that courage to shout back, because it reflects back to the person that what they're doing is unacceptable. You know, if we're silent, sometimes it can be, they can view it as being as us acquiescing to it. But it's not, it's about fear. It is about fear. And if we can muster the courage to shout back like that colleague of yours did, and then that alerts other people around her so who can come and check on her safety, then that's what we need to do. We need to shout it out and let the person know this is not acceptable. And then hopefully that raises the who's surrounding anybody who's witnessing that to step in and support. You know, so because we do need to call it out, because if we don't call it out, it's not going to change.
And also I might add, you know, my male colleagues, family and friends are also saying, what do? You know, we don't accept this. You know, do they need to start shouting it out? You know, when they see it, they're saying, how do we help? I've heard mums talking to their sons saying if they're walking behind a lone female at night, you know, cross the road so they're not feeling intimidated, putting them under stress, or if they see something, you know, intervene safely or get help. You know, is it society now? You know, it's not women v men here, it's women against those who perpetrate the violence, who thinks it's acceptable.
Yeah, 100%.
We all have a responsibility to play. It's not a women's issue, is it? It's a societal issue, and men have an equal role to play as well as women. And, you know, calling it out where they see it to show that it's unacceptable is a great way forward. You know, that bit about not walking behind a woman, you know, and putting her under pressure and making her feel unsafe. I mean, it's a small thing, but it's something that's really impactful, you know, because I know when I'm walking home, even just walking home from the shops, and like you said earlier, I've got my keys in my hand, I've got like 360-degree vision, I'm looking around, I'm checking if anyone's behind me. If anyone's behind me, I'm crossing over the road, you know, just to check, you know, that it's not something sinister. And, you know, really, it shouldn't be that way, should it? So men do have to think about their behaviour and how they can call this out and support women to call it out, because it's a societal issue and we all have a responsibility to make it stop.
And you do martial arts, don't you? So, Irene.
I have done, yes, I have done in the past. And I did that really, it was for my own confidence, because if somebody did take me to task and was going to tackle me, then I'm going to give them a good fight and I'm going to give as good as I get, you know, hopefully be able to escape. But, you know, that's the kind of thing that we have to think about. You know, how do we protect ourselves? You know, do we have an alarm, you know, on our telephones, or an alarm on our keychain that we can press? You know, there's all these things that we have to think about. Men don't have to think about that. They don't have to think about how they're going to protect themselves when they're walking home from the shop or from the pub or from wherever. They can just walk freely and feel completely confident and completely safe. We should be able to do the same. So it's a societal thing, and we all have a responsibility to make that change and to call it out.
And Daisy, your thoughts? You know, we all can't just learn martial arts and you know, go out armed with keys and alarms and everything. You know, we want it to end. We don't want curfews. We just want it to end.
Yeah, we do. I think we've covered it all. But I think the other thing I was going to say about men is, you know, men that are dads, like, need to really make sure that the little boys that see how they behave see the right examples. And, you know, that's where we're going to make real change now, isn't it? In younger boys growing up, and a bit of a, you know, that's how we change the whole of society right now.
And Irene, you've worked in domestic violence for many years. We're talking about the home. You know, it's taken decades and decades to even try to reduce domestic violence. 2 women dying every single week. We've still got a long way to go. And the Home Secretary is now asking for us to reopen the consultation, isn't she? So, you know, what's your message then?
I mean, you know, women have suffered domestic violence in the home for absolutely decades and decades and decades. And it used to be looked upon as a private matter between husband and wife, and it wasn't even deemed to be crime, you know, sort of many, many years ago. And as I say, it's now on the agenda for some consultation for what more can be done. But it's certainly come a long way from the way it used to be in the past. And there is a lot more support out there, but there's a lot more that needs to be done.
And just briefly, as we're wrapping up, you know, we're hoping this is a catalyst for change. Can we take some hope from the Black Lives Matter movement, where, you know, it's exhausting for people to have to call out racism, prejudice. It's exhausting for women to have to call out the microaggressions, to not feel safe. But because people are now taking a stand, we are seeing this at every level, aren't we? That we are making a difference. Are you feeling hopeful?
I feel hopeful because there's a momentum now, isn't there? There's this case, Sarah Everard, has really ignited people, and it's ignited lots and lots of people. So I think we've actually got a swell now of passion and desire to make this change, whereas we were all kind of dealing with it individually, really, weren't we? We didn't talk about these things. We often didn't discuss them, you know, with our female friends or with our colleagues. But now I think there's a real chance to make a proper change, because it has reached so many different people, and people are now coming forward and saying, no, this has got to stop. You know, we've all had these experiences and it's got to stop. And I think there's a swell of action now that can be taken to try and get rid of this behaviour, and this behaviour by the handful of men who assault and make women feel unsafe.
Daisy, are you feeling hopeful?
Yes, definitely. I agree completely, and I think that we've got allies in men now. I think they understand, and I think, you know, as a collective, we have a voice and just a mood to improve society as a whole now across the board. I think abuse and treating people badly is just not okay anymore.
And we've been through this whole pandemic, you know, our world's got a lot smaller, you know, we really rely on our very small friends and family, you know, that is a powerful message, isn't it? You know, treat people as you want to be treated. This is a conversation that will run and run. Thank you so much. You've started the conversation. We will watch the Right to Walk Manchester, Right to Walk Liverpool, right across the north. You know, keep in touch with us. Let us know what's happening, and let's hope there is real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you.
Thank you.